So I've just finished A Realm Reborn properly, and I am feeling things. Final Fantasy games don't usually get so Game of Thrones-ish. I am shook. Friends, we have a lot to unpack today. The whole reason you're grinding, the whole reason you are struggling through these quests is to get to this part where you go, oh, I gotta keep playing, because now we've got this emotion of revenge because everybody's screwing us over. They're killing our favorite little princess girl. All the Lalafels are evil, and I need blood and to murder all of these people who have done me wrong. This is some political heavy business. I probably wouldn't have appreciated it as a younger Jay, but as old me who did enjoy Game of Thrones until they went the wrong way, this is some next level plot building, manipulating, and I'm happy to say I did not see this coming, which is good, because I feel like I can usually see like some story based. I knew something bad was gonna happen with this banquet scene, the famous banquet scene, the final very long cutscene of A Realm Reborn. And there's other stuff I did too. I usually lay it out. I'm not doing that this time because we got to talk about this critical plot point, which just suddenly came out of nowhere. We knew there was treachery. We knew that there was a lot of evil. You know, we've been dealing with dragons. We've been dealing with Ascians. We've been dealing with empires. What else have we been dealing with? But the level of treachery here is not like, this game keeps being like, hey, you see this big dragon that came out of the moon? And I'm like, yeah, that's the villain. They're like, no, that's not the villain. It's never been the villain. The villain has been by your side the whole time. All the friends you made along the way are all the villains. So, man, where do we even start to unpack this? Like, you know, the fact that they freaking murdered Nanamo, like, props to having the balls to do that, because that's a good way to really kind of, you know, put a wound into the player's heart. She was the most wholesome, and she was planning something that you're like, this is definitely going to fix the politics. Yeah, get rid of the monarchy, make it a republic. There's going to be problems with that, but this is a good step forward. And you're all like in her room with her, and she's telling you this, and you're like, this is a good plan. I'm really feeling this plan. Go for it. And then, boom, I was not expecting poison. Like, that caught me so off guard. And then on top of that, to be accused, I was like, of course they're going to accuse me. Of course this little Telegia is going to accuse me, but he's not going to get away with it. But then they planted, the freaking Crystal Braves planted the vial with the poison on me, which I'm like, why did I go, like, earlier they make you go on this quest for the Crystal Braves, and you just end up picking this vial. I was like, what was the point of that? And then when they're like, he has the file on him, I'm like, oh, you son of a traitor. Like, and then it just all falls apart there. And then we get into the confrontation with Raban, and this is really like where like the game is really building my anger towards Telegia Adeleji. I'm like, oh my goodness, Telegia Adeleji is going to take over the kingdom. I'm going to be like exiled with the Scions. We're all going to be branded evil. And the whole like Heavensward arc is all going to be about having a revenge. This is so much like Game of Thrones when the certain kingdom gets screwed over and then you're like, oh, we're so going to get revenge. But then the Red Wedding happens. But anyways, another twist. Let's decapitate Telegia Adeleji, which satisfying, but also I wanted to do that. So my emotions went from sad to revenge to, oh, you little potato, to, oh, he died. Okay, what next? But then there's Lolorito, who's this other Lalafell, and I'm like, oh, here's another little Lalafell to hate. And then there's the Crystal Braves Lalafell. So literally I went from, little Lalafell, you're cute, to, man, these things are evil. Every Lalafell in this cutscene, outside of the one guy I didn't write his name down because he's the one that saves you in the end, they're freaking evil. Oh, and of course Nanamo, precious Nanamo. We don't talk bad about Nanamo. And this, maybe, I don't know how I feel about this. He's the guy that they want us to hate. He's like set up as the villain who actually was pulling all the strings. But we didn't get to hate him enough. All our hate went into Telegia Adeleji, and then the hate flew off with his head. And I'm like, I wasn't ready to redirect all that hate into, I really have struggled with these names, into Lolorito. But then, you know, as we're about to build up some hate for Lolorito, you know, Raban is all like, oh, I'm going to kill you too, you little Lalafell. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then there's freaking Ilbert? Is it Ilbert? What's his name? Ilbert, who my chat has been playing up against me of like, good old Ilbert. I like Ilbert. So I'm like, well, if the chat likes him, I should like him too. He seems like a pretty stamped up guy. No, he's a traitor too. Everybody's a traitor. No, chat's probably a traitor too. They're in on all of this. In fact, they were against me during the whole cutscene, accusing me of murder. So you know what, chat? You're all traitors to me. You're all dead to me. You're all a bunch of Lalafells. except for Takashi. He's a good Lalafell. And then we lose the left arm, which I'm like, oh, that's why the achievement is my losing a left arm or something. I forget what the name is. But on my screen, you can see that I've added a pledge tracker now when I'm playing these games. And the last one was something about losing a left arm. I was like, who's going to lose a left arm? Why are we losing a left arm? Is it symbolic of like, you know, someone's right hand, as in like the person next to someone is going to be lost? Nope, it was actually Raban's left arm, which is gone. So man, Raban was all of us in that cutscene. Like all the feelings we were feeling, Raban's just like, screw politics, let's just murder things. But yes, murder things. But then he got screwed over. And then we have to escape, which I'm like, oh no, this is all falling apart. And then we're seeing all of the Scions. Props to the Scions for all sacrificing themselves for me. But also on the other hand, the whole point of this was to escape together. And none of the Scions escaped. I'm like, this is turning into a worse and worse escape plan. Like at first we lost Ida and Papalimo, which I'm like, okay, that's okay. And we got to see Ida's eye. So it was kind of cool to see them. But then we got a fade to white. I'm like, they want us to think they maybe died. I'm like, oh, whatever. That's a played out trope. But then we have the next scene with Thancred and Istola. And then Thancred takes an arrow to the knee. I'm like, oh, there goes his adventuring days. But then they also have a fade to white. I'm like, why are they killing off all of the Scions here? And then finally Minfila also sacrifices herself so I can run away. Also fade to white. So I'm like, okay, they've done it too many times. There's no way they would kill all of the Scions in this way. They're going to show up later on in some capacity. Like I just was not feeling they would do a bigger deal if they were killing them off. And then we ran off and now we're in Exile the land. Everybody hates us. We've got just me, Tataru, what's his face? Man, Alphino. I don't know if it's been showing through these journals, but I have developed a huge annoyance for Alphino. And it kind of, I think this like momentous cutscene has really cemented what I was feeling, which is, you know, Alphino is going around the realm being all like, oh, Tish Tosh, warrior of light, follow me, do all these things. And he's like, oh, my crystal braves. And he's so annoying because he thinks he has an answer for everything. He's got like his little army. He's like, oh, my crystal braves. And he like name drops that all the time like it's super secret club. Well, sir, your crystal braves are traitors and it's all your fault. Now luckily, and this was a really soothing cutscene, in following cutscenes we just see Alphino being really sad and actually feeling the weight of all of his mistakes. I'm like, yeah, it is all your fault. Stop thinking you could solve all the problems. Like I was not sympathetic to him at all. I'm like, you should feel guilty. I'm like, thank you game for giving me that satisfaction. And it's like, well, everyone hates us. I guess we're going to go to Ishgard, you know, where everyone is in an isolated kingdom. So I really love that narrative of what Heavensward's about, where we're going. We're going to stay with the Ishgardians, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I mean, there's Sir Emmerich there, which, this is the first time I get to talk about him. Really cool character, beautiful voice, beautiful man. Just amazing, like locked me up in his castle. We are set up for a really good time in Heavensward. I'm emotionally invested now. I've gotten a little payoff and I'm like, okay, was it worth it? Probably not. I mean, where else would I invest 60 hours just to get that kind of a payoff? There are better ways to do that. But now I'm in, so let's keep it going because it's only going to get better from this point. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming up next. Oh, there's another character I forgot about. Yugiri. So Yugiri's with us too, the ninja. We got a face reveal, which was very anticlimactic because it's just like all of a sudden she took off her mask. I'm like, is that Yugiri? And this is going to sound super rude. I don't like, being a rude person. And I have to say, I preferred Yugiri with the mask on. I don't know. I think it left more to the imagination. Like, she's a beautiful character, but just not doing it for me. Like, So, that was my impression of the end of Realm Reborn. Now, there's a few gaps to talk about as well, because the last time in my last journal, I was sharing how this game had gone excessively boring. And it's funny that is the point that I made that journal, because soon after, as soon as you get into the Dreams of Ice Patch, which I think it's 2.4, the story starts picking up and it actually starts getting interesting. So you're still doing all of the primal stuff, like we fought Ramu, and this is actually the first time I was starting to wipe a lot with my parties. And so we started doing this thing called minimum item level, which actually makes the fight a little bit more synced to what it originally was. And because of that, I think everyone just being a little rusty, maybe on the mechanics, we wiped a lot on Ramu. We wiped like 3-4 times before we could finally get through it. But I have to say, Ramu had absolutely beautiful music through that fight. It really reminded me of like Nier Automata. Then there was a bunch of other that we did Titan hard mode, which I didn't really have that much to say about that. We did get the cool like little tutorial. I love how they explain how souls work in this game. So they explain how the Ascians, when they die, like instead of going back to like the flow of the earth or whatever, or to the aetherite or whatever it's called, they like go to the dark crystal and they get reborn, which basically makes all the Ascians immortal. And now we have to find a solution of how do we break the cycle so we can actually kill the Ascians so we can get rid of this evil from our land, which that sounds like there could be consequences of messing with that. So we eventually get introduced to this lady called Moon Brita, which I have a lot of things to say about it. Moon Brita was a very cool character who was killed off way too soon. And I know I'm skipping things here, but this was a character I could get behind. She had some good energy, she had some good presence, and I was so surprised that they chose to kill her off within this almost the same patch. She like lasted a patch or two when she took a moonbeam, because her name's Moon Brita. She took a moon shot to the chest. And sure, it was a sacrifice, and they kind of made a big deal about her death, but I didn't feel it as a player. I wasn't invested in her. I really didn't think that they built her up enough. She had so much potential. I'll be real with you guys. I felt more sadness when I found out my boy Wilred was murdered. And for those of you who have been playing 10 years, you may not even know who Wilred is. He was my boy from the Crystal Braves that I helped recruit. And he only got a few cutscenes, but like I really connected with this guy. And when I found him face down in the water, I'm like, they murdered him off screen. It was just such a bad feeling. In hindsight, though, he got murdered because he was finding out about all the traitors. So you know what? Oh, makes sense. Kind of like that. Oh, Dreams of Ice. Yes, we get introduced to very cool pretty boy Emmerich. Love that guy. We get introduced to another cool villain called Iceheart, who is a woman that for some reason really hates the Ashgardians, has the power to turn into Shiva, which is something we never saw happen in a Primal. And that fight was cool as well. I love the Shiva fight. Loved the chat reacting to Shiva, because I learned about like how there's a part where she freezes everyone, so the more experienced players are all like trying to pose and freeze frame, which was cool. There was a dungeon which I didn't really like that much called Snowcloak. Everybody was kind of drumming it up for me, and I was like, this is really boring music of a dungeon. Like, it was really putting me to sleep. On the way out of Snowcloak, I got a really cool experience fighting a behemoth. So I think that's like a world boss or something that's a rare spawn. So we got to fight that. I got to have that achievement, which made me feel really good. We're still getting like threads being built about a new emperor being crowned overseas. I don't know what's going on there. Another thing worth saying, and this is kind of a big deal in my journey, is I finally got a haircut. So I don't know what I was thinking with my original haircut. I was so proud of it. I used to think I was a very pretty boy, but I've cut my hair. It's short now. I look so dashing, and the chat hates it because I look like the main character from the trailers, which, you know, I'm always labeled as a vanilla streamer that always builds my character in the most vanilla way. And I'm not going to argue that, but it just looks so good. I mean, look at this boy. He looks good. And it's funny because when I looked at the Heavensward trailer, my main character looks like the guy in the trailer. I was like, is that me in the trailer? Like, is that character supposed to embody the Warrior of Light? And people are like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, I can resonate to this so much better because that actually looks like my character in the cutscene. So, you know, it's a win-win in my books. I've also gotten some new armor, so I've changed up my look. I no longer have like the black robes and my flame sword. I switched it over to more like this future. I used poetics to get some new armor. I look like a futuristic samurai, which I really love. So loving the new look I've got. Another dungeon that came up and introduced kind of the storyline of dragons. We got the Keeper of the Lake, which I have to say is my favorite dungeon when it comes to the music. The music in this dungeon is amazing. It's just so good. Like, it has a very familiar theme playing through it, but it's kind of remixed. And then we got to meet a pretty important dragon. His corpse is viewable everywhere. Midgar Somer. He took away my mommy shield, my crystal mommy shield. So I don't know why that happened. And now he's just like, I'm going to be your companion too. And now you're a pledge to me. I was like, I don't think I'm agreeing to this, but okay. I'll have a covenant with the dragon, but then I'm also going to end up fighting dragons because later on, there's an attack on Ishgard and I got to defend it, which is also another cool plot point. We got to fight like this big dragon on a bridge called Bishop, and it's like a solo duty. So you're fighting mobs, then the dragons come in, and you got like hit the dragon in different phases. I really liked how they handled this. Like, it's just been really getting much better. And then finally, the last thing worth mentioning is this fight with the Ascian called Nabrialis, which was okay. I kept wiping because I didn't understand the mechanic, and after a while I just told my people, like, can you just tell me what's going on? And they're like, yeah, you gotta like touch the balls alternatively, and then you gotta like limit break at this point. I was like, okay, I don't really like that. Like, I don't think I could have figured that out on my own, which maybe it's more telling about me than the game, but it felt like a really weird gimmick. So that's where I am. I also did the Crystal Tower minimum item level. This journal is already quite long, so I'm going to put that in another journal. And now we're going into Heavensward. And oh man, if I had more time, I would probably be a Dragoon, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I might stick to Samurai because I just don't have time to grind out a new Dragoon because this pledge is tough. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to complete it in time as clock is ticking. But I'll see you all on stream in Heavensward or on the next journal. And until next time, keep it classy.